I'm here with some early impressions on the new fragrance line launched from Bottega Veneta. This was a Christmas present, so Merry Christmas to those who celebrate, and it's one that I asked for. I had encountered these fragrances just on happenstance while walking around the Bal Harbour shops in Miami a few weeks ago. I vaguely had remembered that there was a new fragrance line, but it wasn't on my mind when I entered the store. But kind of interestingly, I thought somebody has doused themselves in Comme des Garçons 2 Man in here. And then as I walked around the store, I got to the back and I saw the little fragrance display and I thought, oh, it's all the new fragrances that have been sprayed. So I tried a few on at the time and I was intrigued enough to want to spring for the sample set. I do recommend, if you can, which I know it's hard if you don't live near a big city, try at least 1 or 2 fragrances from a line before buying the discovery set. Discovery sets can add up quite quickly, and there's been times where I blind bought an entire house only to find that I don't like anything in the set, and then I just have kind of all these samples I never want to wear again that I could have put towards a full bottle. So usually I'll dip my toe in, but I think to really get to know a fragrance well, it helps to have them at home with you, to live with them. So I was happy to get the discovery set. A little background on the brand for those who don't follow fashion. Recently, there's been a lot of turnover, but it's a fairly common thing in the fashion world. Designer musical chairs moving from house to house. So previously, Bottega was known well for their leather goods, but had kind of fallen into irrelevancy in terms of the fashion world. I think their bags and wallets have always been kind of like classic staples, but they weren't really a presence in terms of runway and ready-to-wear fashion. This all changed when Daniel Lee took over as creative director, and he had a very signature style. He's the one who brought this Bottega green to the house. It was sort of a minimal style. I have to be honest, I was kind of a hater because I found a lot of it derivative. I just found echoes of designers that I already knew, particularly Rick Owens and a small New York designer called Siki Im, who did the same kind of signature triangle chest pocket detail years before. But anyway, it was highly acclaimed for bringing Bottega back to relevancy. And then he left the brand to take over at Burberry, where he has since floundered a bit in trying to find a style for Burberry. Anyway, in his stead took over Mathieu Blasi, who I believe was working there under Daniel Lee or with Daniel Lee at the time. And he brought even more acclaim to the brand. I would say his style is a little more craft focused. Beautiful textiles and fabrics, very artistic, less minimal and clean and kind of futuristic as Daniel Lee's style, and I really like it. In terms of positioning, Bottega is kind of in the upper echelon of designer fashion. They're kind of reaching the heights of Hermes and the Row in terms of really high quality materials and high quality craftsmanship, and a humongous price tag to boot. One of the signature items under Mathieu Blasi is these trompe-l'oeil leather shirts and pants. The first collection, the first look, was simple faded blue jeans and white tank top, both which were made of leather and cost thousands and thousands of dollars. Anyway, there's a shakeup once again as Mathieu has left for Chanel, which is a really interesting pick. And in his stead, Louise Trotter has been announced as the new creative director at Bottega. So I say all this because I think it is relevant to the direction of the fragrances. There's some much loved fragrances from the old collection, Bottega for Man, for Woman. I've actually not smelled these before, but I think those are vestiges of the old sort of just leather goods Bottega. So it was only a matter of time that they wanted to translate their hype and success in the fashion world into, of course, a high-end designer exclusive line. But I always think it's really disappointing when these brands forsake and discontinue their legacy scents. They could at least rebottle them, update them so it matches the current brand aesthetic, but keep them in production. But it's a good lesson to know that when it comes to fashion brands that don't have a particularly long legacy in fragrance, the fragrances are nothing permanent. They can be subject to the whims of the fate of new designers coming in and the house getting new aesthetics. So I think it does make sense that they wanted to release something that matches the aesthetic and the price point of where Bottega lies right now in the fashion world. So they've gone with these very fancy looking, sort of handmade, again, crafty, kind of lumpy bottles. They do look a little bit like the poo emoji. And I noticed in the store they had these nice little marble stands, and apparently they come with those marble stands. And you pay for it because the price per bottle is $450. I'm thinking these are more objet d'art, design elements, things that people want to display, which doesn't really work for perfume heads because we have just too many bottles that one works as our display. So anyway, let's get into the scents. As I said, my impression overall was favorable. After trying them, I was intrigued enough to want to try them later. What was left on blotter, I kept smelling over the course of the next few days, and I liked it. A couple things to note that they say 5 fragrances from 100% natural origin ingredients, inspired by the city of Venice. Yeah, that's basically it. Transporting, the rest is kind of typical PR blurb. But of natural origin, of course, this is quite vague, and I kind of wish they hadn't even bothered saying that, but I think it's going with the natural materials and the kind of crafty approach to the fabrics they use. Maybe they're trying to speak to the customer in that way, but of natural origin is so vague that it could be almost anything. It doesn't necessarily mean it's natural perfumery. So let's dive into the fragrances. The Discovery set comes in this lovely little box, and of course you get the little bag in Bottega green. Unfortunately, they're dabbers, but I actually don't mind these because they have the really sort of small hole, which allows you to kind of like splash it out on your arm without dumping the whole thing. I've worn all of these on skin a little bit. I've got 4 of them going right now, but I also blotted a little bit on paper because I thought it'd be a bit awkward to do that on camera. So we'll go through these in order. So first we've got Deja Minuit. And here on the box it says just geranium essence and jasmine absolute. On the website they list a few more things. They list winter lemon oil, cardamom, cinnamon, jasmine, geranium, base of patchouli, and vetiver. I had also read that there's a base of vetiver running throughout the line. Yeah, this one I like quite a lot. I do like geranium. It has that sort of almost like astringent herbal feel. I don't get exactly vetiver per se as I know it throughout the line, but I do notice a very like close stylistic cohesion of sort of like a resinous. I get more of what I would consider like a smoky labdanum in the base of many of these, and I can see why them all mixed together gave me the impression of CDG2 Man, although none of them smell like that. None of them are quite as bold or smoky as CDG2 Man. But I like this because I like geranium. It smells fairly simple. And in fact, I think all of these are fairly simple, and that might be the biggest knock against them. For such a high price, if you're expecting something extremely special and opulent, you're not going to get it here. What I do like about them is I do think they are well done with none of the kind of typical designer BS in the bases, although I don't think they're without aroma chemicals of some kind, because some of them smell slightly familiar. But to me, the base of them is more sort of like a slightly vaguely smoky resin kind of smell. So Deja Mini, we'll go through them and I'll tell you my favorite. Colpo di Sol, this says Angelica root, orange flower, absolute. And then on the website, product details, it says they add Angelica, bergamot, orange flower, osmanthus, ambrette. Again, this similar base of vetiver oil, eco musk. This one, I actually love orange flower, but there's something which really annoys me about this, which is I've smelled this exact same orange flower smell in 3 or 4 recent releases now. And I find it really like a strong, unpleasant, like pumped up, almost like peppery orange flower. I smelled this in the Guerlain Neroli Plein Sud. I smelled it in the orange flower based Fendi perfume. And there's something about it I just don't like at all. It takes orange flower in this like almost harsh, scratchy direction, and it smells just like that to me here. So for me, this is my least favorite. It's also very strong. Out of the 4 on skin, this is the one I'm catching wafts of the most. Oh, Le Labo Lavande, that's the other one where I smell the same exact, I'm not sure if there's just a new extraction or aroma chemical of this like high-powered orange flower, but I typically love orange flower. I like the way, maybe I like neroli even more because that includes the twigs. I like when it has sort of a green, a mix of woodiness and floralness and citrus all coming together is really beautiful. But this kind of orange flower, I truly, truly hate. I keep smelling it everywhere and I'm getting sick of it. So on to Acqua Sale. This one's nice. Juniper berry and mandarin essence are the 2 notes the box lists. I get a lot of juniper. It has a really piney, coniferous, nice for the holiday season because pine and orange make you think of those pomanders. But yeah, it's maintaining some of that lovely juniper pininess still. They cite black pepper oil, mandarin, sea salt, orris, and again, vetiver and labdanum and eco-musk. Don't know what that is, but interesting. So on to the next one, Alchemy. This one also lists labdanum and pepper extract. Yeah, this one, more just straight up labdanum. There is a peppery essence to it. If I could compare it to something, I have the Austin's, I believe it's patchouli number 1. That's all about labdanum with a big like spicy rosemary, like herbal beginning. Reminds me a bit of the dry down of that. So Alchemy, they list as well, myrrh oil, leather accord, labdanum absolute, vetiver oil, sandalwood oil. Yeah, very nice, like resiny, maybe reminds me a little bit of what's that, Wazamba Parfum d'Empire, but a lot simpler. And the last one, Come With Me, they list here, orris butter and leather, so iris and leather. And that's what we get. Beautiful iris leather. Of course, it's been done before in the likes of Dior Homme. I'm also reminded a bit of the treatment of iris and coffee in the Guerlain Iris Torrefied. I'll come out with it. This is my favorite. Even though it's a smell we've smelled before, it's just really well done. Really smooth, semi-sweet. It smells like very expensive, refined leather that you've dropped a lipstick in. It's kind of a scent profile that I'm just a sucker for. So, you know, I'm easy to please when it comes to this. But I'm also a bit critical because I have smelled it. And this is probably one of the better done versions of that scent profile that I've come across. They say, product details for Come With Me, artichoke, simchap, wow. Bergamot oil, carrot seed, orris, jasmine, again, vetiver, vanilla, leather-like skin accord in the base. So what can we say? The price is egregious. I wouldn't even consider these at the current price, but I do like many of them. I think somewhat like Celine, there's a very like coherent base and style to all of these. I think the reason I'm drawn to them is that I do like simple fragrances if they're well done. The materials smell high quality, and somewhat like the fashion brand, it seems like the idea here is to really focus on just a few high quality materials juxtaposed next to each other. I think for the price, of course, we expect more. Chanel Les Exclusives is, you know, the Grande Dame, and for this price, you could buy a 200 ml, and I would take one of those any day, all day, every day over one of these. Now, if you don't want to buy the bottle, they do sell refills for a more reasonable price. I had it here, let's see, of $320 for 150 milliliters. So obviously a large chunk of the price is going into that really beautiful bottle presentation. I think probably it will speak to Bottega customers who can drop $5,000 on a trompe l'oeil leather jean, maybe $8,000 for those, I don't remember. And they want this beautiful objet d'art. But at least to me, the scents aren't a total throwaway. They're nice scents, they're well done. If I can think of anything they remind me of, it's tricky, but I did think of Affinescence, especially they have a leather iris, or it's queer curcuma, it's a leather and turmeric scent. And this reminds me a bit of that, but boy, I really like this. I'm not tempted to spend $4.50 for it, but if they ever show up at discounters, which I sort of doubt, because it seems that the trend with the new designer exclusive lines is to keep tight distribution on them, like boutique only. So who knows if they will ever show up on discount. So at least the samples come with 2.5 milliliters, so I'll get a good amount of wears out of these. Let's see what else we can say about them. Yeah, very similar. I do think another criticism possibly is that they do lack a bit of personality, especially with the creative directors switching around right as these come out. It feels as if this was maybe done by a corporate team that's like, okay, we take the codes of the Bottega fashion house, let's slap together some expensive fragrances. They go to, a fragrance flavoring and compounding facility, and they ask, what do you have in the like high-end tier of fragrances? And this really shows the power of strong creative direction. Houses like Chanel have a fragrance department which is sort of immune to the whims of the fashion side of things, because they're almost separate and they have their own nose as creative director. But Bottega, clearly, I don't think the designer himself had much of a say about the fragrance line. Somewhere like Celine, again, you get heady, which I really appreciate, although it may make him an awful person to work with. But he's clearly a humongous control freak. He designs the bottles, the boutiques, he takes the photos for the ads, and you can tell he's got his hands in the fragrances quite deeply. So what you come out with is something that really has a strong personality and a strong viewpoint, which is as strong as the fashion and the design side, which is a really good thing, especially when you're spending a lot of money. So I would say these do lack that really strong, bold viewpoint of like a single creative director. They do smell a little bit generic, but again, they don't smell bad. There are designer high-end lines that are a lot worse and almost just expensive, I would say. So yeah, it's if I'm taking them purely as fragrances, I like them a lot, and probably I would buy, if money were no object, I would buy this Acqua di Sal. I'm really enjoying that fresh juniper-y coniferous with like a little bit, don't get too much mandarin, more just like juniper and labdanum. And I would buy Come With Me. This is a really intoxicating, addictive, leathery iris. A little bit sweet too. But these are very, very simple. As you can see, the box only really lists two things, and I would say that's kind of the theme. Each one is not even a juxtaposition, but two notes mostly. I think the genius of something like Hermes, which is quite simple, Jean-Claude Elena's sense, is they juxtapose two things that might clash, so they sort of bounce off each other. Whereas these don't feel like there's any clash really. Iris and leather go well together. Juniper and labdanum go well together. Geranium and jasmine, that's kind of a little bit interesting. But yeah, you don't get that clash, and you don't get kind of the airy, floaty, wafty thing that Hermescence, that Jean-Claude Elena's Hermescence give you. You get more kind of like a down to the earth, like resinous thing. So anyway, I've probably blabbered on enough about these Bottega releases. Let me know if you get the chance to try them and what you think. They are available now in stores, at least boutiques. We'll see if the wider launch brings them to department stores, and if they ever, fingers crossed, end up on some kind of discounter in the future.